on a few of them. So we're some disclaimers before we get started. This is not medical advice. So if you're concerned about any of the issues we're going to talk about, please talk to your doctor. No one person with the same condition has the same experience with it. So it's not an end all be all for everyone. And we just try to keep an open mind. So feel free to ask any questions that you guys want throughout this. We have a Padlet with a QR code here, so you can ask questions anonymously if you so choose. We had a couple questions last time that were really good, so if you guys want to ask questions, please do. And we will definitely reference them at the end. And also feel free to raise your hand on Zoom or speak out in Zoom or in person if you have a question, and we'll get to that. So today we're going to be focusing on ME/CFS, so myalgic encephalomyelitis / chronic fatigue syndrome, cystic fibrosis. We're going to touch on a little bit in our takeaways, but we do not have a speaker with cystic fibrosis that's going to be talking about that today. And then PANDAS. So pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome or pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with streptococcal infections. So some takeaways from our presentation last time. ME/CFS is a chronic disease characterized by overwhelming fatigue that isn't entirely recovered by rest. So people can go to sleep and still wake up and have a lot of fatigue. Cystic fibrosis is a progressive genetic condition that seriously affects the body's organs, including the lungs, digestive system, and other systems. And the cells that make mucus, perspiration, and digestive fluids in the body are impacted by cystic fibrosis, and it makes those fluids thicker, and they absorb too much water and sodium. And PANS/PANDAS there are a group of sudden neuropsychiatric symptoms that are caused by an infection. So with PANDAS specifically, it's caused by strep infection, and PANS is just any infection and started. And it's an autoimmune condition that attacks healthy brain cells. And last but not least, what we always say, be kind to others. You never know what someone's going through just by looking at them. What illnesses is that they are invisible, and we don't know how people are dealing with their lives. So always be nice. So today we have two guest speakers. We have Susan and Dina willing to talk about us. You're willing to talk about themselves with us. So thank you guys so much for being willing to be speakers. And yeah, take it away for our first question. So what is your guys' experiences with these assorted conditions that we're talking about this month? If you don't mind sharing what's your diagnosis or what do you experience in your day-to-day lives?
Sue, do you want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm Sue Jackson, and on March 2nd, 2002, I suddenly became very ill with what I later found out was ME/CFS. It's an immune disorder. The CFS is what the US calls it, chronic fatigue syndrome, but the rest of the world calls it myalgic encephalomyelitis. And the main thing you need to know is it's a lot more debilitating than it sounds. It is an immune disorder. I got sick in 2002. It took me a year to get a diagnosis. And 2 years later, both of my young sons also developed ME/CFS. They were just 6 and 10 at the time. It does have a genetic component. It does tend to run in families. Our younger son had a milder case, and thankfully after 10 years was completely recovered. So by age 16, he's 25 now and living a full active life, employed. And our older son, his ME/CFS was more serious, like mine. So he's 28 now. However, we have both been able to improve our conditions over the last 20 years with a wide range of treatments. And he just, for the first time, 2 weeks ago, got his first full-time job in his professional field. So
Awesome.
we're very excited about that, a huge milestone. As for me, I couldn't manage working outside the home. I am a freelance writer though. 17 years ago, I started a blog about living with chronic illness, and I still keep that up. I started several different support groups for those with ME/CFS and related illnesses. There are a bunch of things that kind of have similar similarities. And I also wrote a book, Finding a New Normal, Living Your Best Life with Chronic Illness. This is not specifically about ME/CFS, but is for anyone with any kind of chronic medical condition.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. I have tried writing like a short book before and it is a lot of work, so I applaud you on doing that. And congrats to your son for getting a job. That's awesome.
Thank you. We're very excited. It's a big deal, big milestone.
Great.
How about you, Gina?
So I'm here to talk about PANDAS, which I had no idea what it was. I have two daughters, one that's 25, and the younger one that is 21. She's a junior at Penn State, and she was born like a Spitfire. Always wanted to do more, play sports, like the stable child. And then one day, everything changed. I was in my kitchen and she walked through the kitchen with her back turned towards me. And I was like, what are you doing? And she was like, I can't look at you. I can't look at you. I'm like, okay, that's weird. She was in first grade at this point, young. So, still a little quirky. That's how kids are. And then things started to progress. She started talking about uncontrollable thoughts, thoughts about people. We were out at a restaurant and she said, Mom, that lady's ugly over there. And I said, what do you mean? Like, why would you say that? She's like, I don't know. My brain's telling me she's ugly, Mom. Why is my brain telling me that? Because I don't think she's ugly. So it was like her brain was telling her things that she didn't want to think. I'm reading some of the things she wrote down because she couldn't do this tonight because she had class. But she said she had thoughts about suicide in first grade. I get very choked about this. We went to Christmas Eve Mass and we came home. And she said, Mom, and I said, yeah. She goes, did you ever think about killing yourself? And I said, no, Lily, why? She said, because my brain is telling me that I need to kill myself. So that was something that put us over the edge. We thought, like, what's happening with her? Like, she was normal one minute and in the next minute she was a completely different child. She kept saying things about hating Jesus, hating God, a lot of just weird things. She was saying that her t-ball coach was touching her in inappropriate ways. It was one thing after another. And I thought, my child is crazy. I thought, like, what else could it be? Like, why is this happening? Is somebody touching her? Are things happening? Why is she saying all these things? So long story short, as any parent does, I Googled all these things and PANDAS came up and I thought, my God, like maybe this could be it. So I contacted her pediatrician and I went in and he said, tell me what's going on. And I told him. And when I told him about her thoughts of hating God, he said, I think I know what she has. And I said, okay. He goes, I'm going to give her a blood test to see if she has strep in her blood. And he explained to me what PANDAS was and how it affects the brain. And he gave her the blood test and it came back positive. And I was never so happy for her to be positive for having something wrong with her. Like, I thought there's an answer. So she was one of the lucky ones. He gave her antibiotics, which took care of the strep in her blood. And he explained that sometimes kids, when they get strep, it manifests itself in their brainstem. But it also, from what I understand, it also affects, like if you're already a person with OCD or you have tendencies towards that, it affects you greater. Some kids get a tick. Some kids get really, really sick. She said that she doesn't really remember a whole lot, but she just remembers feeling the way that she felt and that she always worried that it would come back. But she said, I'm looking at her notes. She said that she still thinks about it once in a while, but she's not worried that it's going to come back. But she just thinks that, she just wants to understand more about it because it's just one of these crazy things. I now work in an elementary school And whenever I can share this with a parent, if they're ever going through anything kind of similar, I always share it because I don't want another parent to have to go through, because obviously it still affects me, or feel like I felt without an understanding of what, like, maybe it could be this, maybe this could be is what is affecting their child, so.
For sure. That's,
So-
yeah, that's kind of why we have this club in general. It's like having a safe space for students, but also like, I know my mom probably feels very similarly to you. Like I have a lot of different chronic conditions. But like when we finally found answers and everything, it was like there was never a better day. It's like a weird experience to go
It
through
is.
something like this. It's
Well,
like,
like, you're happy to find out what it is. Like my kid wasn't psycho, she had a condition. Now we can move on and figure out how to treat it,
exactly.
Especially to have a doctor actually believe you is,
And I never thought that he
amazing
would. I
feeling.
was shocked by that, but it was my one statement that she said, Mom, why is my brain telling me I hate God? I don't hate Jesus. I don't hate God. Why is my, like, it was like her brain was telling her things, but she was with it enough to know that I don't believe those things. Why is my brain, it was like her body was trying to fight her. It's bizarre, very bizarre. I hope I don't ever have to go through that again.
I know the same thing. So that kind of goes into our next question, like what are the worst symptoms of the conditions that you deal with? So like, again, for like your daughter or to yourself or your sons. And when did you start experiencing symptoms, or when do they start, at what age, like, and how do you kind of cope with them?
So ME/CFS often feels like having a really bad flu. I know it's described as fatigue. Everybody who has it hates the name chronic fatigue syndrome because it's choosing one symptom that's common to hundreds of diseases, and highlighting that. So very often there are some kind of immune symptoms. For my son and I, it was recurring sore throats, really bad sore throats, like the worst we had ever experienced. Some people get swollen glands. We also get like flu-like aches, the way you feel when you have the flu and your body just aches all over, like a non-specific achiness. So there are all these symptoms caused by the immune system overreacting to things that aren't there or to things that aren't dangerous. But the primary characteristic that defines ME/CFS is an intolerance to even mild exertion. And this is the characteristic that limits our lives the most, and why it's so amazing to us that our son's able to work now. So what this means is you might be feeling good one day, because very often it's up and down. You take a walk or you go shopping, do something else that's mildly exerting, and within an hour to 24 hours, you suddenly feel like you have the worst flu you've ever had. And you're flat on your back and can't get out of bed or up off the couch. What we call a crash. So when you're in the midst of it, like that first year that I was sick and I didn't know about this, it feels like the ups and downs are completely random. Like one day you feel fine and another day you can't get out of bed and you have no idea why. But once you understand about the exertion intolerance, then you can begin to see this pattern. And it is really what limits our lives the most. And going hand in hand with that is orthostatic intolerance, which is also known as dysautonomia. And this means that we have trouble holding our heart rate and blood pressure steady. So when we're upright, even sitting up like this, especially this late at night for me, my heart rate goes high, my blood pressure goes low. Fortunately, that's one of the things that we've been able to treat. Not so that we're completely normal, but enough so that we can tolerate some exertion. Because without treatment, it's like getting up and walking to the bathroom is too much exertion. So that's really the part of the disease that's the most restrictive and that limits our lives the most.
Yes, Stephanie and I both have POTS, which is a type of
Okay.
dysautonomia, and that's how we met. And I'm sure, Stephanie, you can definitely relate to that as well.
Yes. Unfortunately.
So my daughter was in first grade, like I said, when this happened, so a long time ago. And we were fortunate enough to be able to, I'm gonna say cure it, but kind of get rid of it with antibiotics. I do know another parent close by. I thought maybe she was gonna do this tonight, but I guess she couldn't. But her daughter was so severe with it that the medication she had to be on cost them $50,000. And I think, I don't even know, like you do anything for your kid to not have to go through this and feel like this.
How, don't mind, if you don't know the answer, it's really fine, or don't mind the answer, you don't have to answer, but, how often is that for, like, Medicaid, like $50,000 for like a year's worth, or like a month's worth, or?
I think it was like a stretch, like a session, like maybe 6
Oh.
weeks or to treat it. That's all I know. I don't know what it is called, and I think how fortunate we were to just give antibiotics. But my daughter now has a condition with her esophagus and her sphincter muscle that goes into her stomach, where it doesn't open and her food will not go into her stomach. And long story short, after going through that, they said that that's an autoimmune disorder, sometimes caused by a virus. And both of us are like, what are the odds that I would have this and that? Like maybe it was the PANDAS that caused me to have this. It's nerve damage from a virus. So looking back, we think maybe this could play a part in that. I don't know. But she's pretty much, I wouldn't say she's pretty much stable now. She doesn't think she's stable. She's a junior in college. You girls know what that's like. You know, she questions everything, but she still says, Mom, I remember how I felt, and I don't want to ever feel like that again when this was happening. So it's kind of scary, but I feel kind of good in a way that I can now help others. If someone says, oh, my kid is experiencing these symptoms, like, can I help? Like, I would do anything to help anybody not have to go through what we went through as a family. It's crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
I just wanted to add, because I haven't mentioned it yet, my son and I also both have Lyme disease. And in addition, he has 2 other tick infections. And neither of us we've both had tick infections since he got them in 2007 and I did in 2008. We haven't been able to get rid of those because of our immune abnormalities. So, we do think he got rid of one of the infections, but he still has Lyme and Bartonella. And I still have Lyme, and it's just something that we have to keep taking treatments for and just sort of manage. And he is still, he's still working on that. So I just wanted to mention that because tick infections are a really important thing to look for when you're dealing with these kind of illnesses or struggling to find a diagnosis, and it's not necessarily an either or. In many cases, lots of people with Lyme develop POTS, for instance. So,
I was going to say that.
yeah.
We talk about comorbidities a lot in all of our presentations. We have like a whole list of everything that can, well, not everything probably, because there's probably way more than what we can list, but we can stab at it. So I know, you kind of explained this a little bit for your daughter, but what was the process like for getting diagnosed?
I contacted the doctor and walked in, and instantly because I wrote everything down, because I thought if I don't write these, like I just found a paper that I kept from back then. And it's funny now, but she looked at, I have written down here, she told me I was a bad cook one night. She was like, Mom, you're a bad cook. She was told the cashier in a store that she was ugly. Like she was saying things and acting bizarre. Like, so I wrote all these things down, but in writing all these down and looking it up, when I did go to the doctor, it was weird. And he's an old fashioned doctor, old school. I did not think he was gonna, be for me saying, I looked this up on the internet, but instantly he knew exactly what I was talking about. And I'll never forget that day. I felt so relieved that he actually listened to me, because so many times and I'm sure Sue, like going through what you went through, or the girls with POTS and everything, you walk in the office and you tell them your symptoms and they just want to write you a script and send you on your way. It's like nobody listens to what you're feeling. Like my dad, I'm dealing with him. He's been dizzy for 3 years and he's gone to so many doctors and nobody could tell him why. And it's like, he's so frustrated. He just wants an answer. Like, somebody help me, So the fact that he did listen to me and helped me, I'm forever grateful to him for that. So.
And that should be the standard of care. That shouldn't be like every once in a while, like we get this happening and it's like a big thing. That should be normal. And that's, again, kind of why we started this club.
That's great.
Future healthcare professionals know about these things and it's like, oh, I know what that is. And you just help someone right away, rather than having to play this whole back and forth game of like, you've never heard this in medical school? Like, what are you doing?
The internet's good and bad. You could go round and round in a vicious cycle, or it could help you.
Sure.
Yes.
How about you, Sue?
Like I said, it took me a year, almost to the day, to get diagnosed. And during that year, as I mentioned, it was very up and down. So I also took a lot of notes. I've got an engineering background, so I'm very analytical. So I saw a dozen different specialists, had hundreds and hundreds of lab tests, and went into each appointment with my 3-ring binder. All my lab results, charts of my symptoms, charts showing how I was feeling so that they could see this weird up and down pattern. And over and over, no matter what kind of specialist I saw, they said, I have no idea what's wrong with you. So finally we were looking for a new primary care physician. Our old office, you just got shunted to a different doctor every time. And especially with something chronic going on, that wasn't working for us. So we were just looking for a new primary care physician. I got extremely lucky. We signed up with a woman who's just a few miles from our house, just because she was close and she was accepting new patients. I went in on that first appointment with her with my binder, told her the story. And in that very first appointment, she said, I'm pretty sure you have chronic fatigue syndrome. She said, I have a few other patients with it. And we talked about it. And I left that appointment thinking, she doesn't know what it is. She just made that up. That sounds like, a trash can diagnosis, something a doctor says when they don't know what it is. But I went home and I looked it up and I found the CDC's website and I went to the library and I found a couple of books. One was a memoir by a patient. The other was written by a doctor, one of the top specialists in the field. And I was sobbing as I read these books, because it was the first time in a year that I recognized my experience in someone else's. Both the doctor and the patient just described perfectly what I was experiencing. And that was the first time I learned about this exertion intolerance, which made perfect sense once I heard about it. To explain these seemingly random crashes and relapses that I was having. So I went back to her and I said, I think you're right. And again, I was extremely fortunate because most doctors, even if they know enough to diagnose ME/CFS, will say there's nothing that we can do about it because there are no FDA approved treatments even today. But I was extremely fortunate. This was way back in 2003. And as soon as I said, I think you're right, I think this is what I have, she said, great, are you ready to try some treatments? And she knew the basics of how to treat it. So I was extremely fortunate. I mean, it is very typical for patients with ME/CFS to go 5, 10, 15 years without a diagnosis.
Is there a test, a blood test or something that it's just symptoms?
That is the holy grail. That's what all the research is well, but research is looking at treatments as well, but a lot of the research is focused on finding biomarkers, a distinct signature for ME/CFS. And they have found some things, but nothing that is like ready to be applied to a commercial laboratory. They've found things that their specialty research labs can differentiate between ME/CFS and patients with other illnesses, but nothing yet that's transferable to a commercial lab today.
Lily, your comment's gonna make me cry. Don't say that. I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but like this, wait, let me pull the actual comment because I'm gonna butcher it. She just said, this gives me hope that I can eventually get the diagnosis I'm looking for.
Mm.
Lily, I hope you do too.
Oh,
Y'all are not allowed to make me cry. This is not okay. This is our last general body meeting of the semester. So in general, I guess for both of you, what makes your conditions better and what makes them worse? Like, what have you noticed within, are there like patterns of things with you and your sons or for your daughter on how they're feeling or how does it affect them now?
she really doesn't have any effects from it now. Thank goodness. But I do see that she's still a little, I want to say OCD. She's just very, she worries a lot. It's just that she's that type of personality. So I guess if it ever does happen again, I maybe would notice if it manifests itself in a different way. But she knows enough now. Like I'm looking at her notes and question number 7, I forget what it was, but she said, don't dismiss the thoughts and feelings you are feeling. Tell someone and don't be scared to let someone know that you're feeling that way. And I guess when you're in first grade, I don't even know what she knew about suicide, but it's like, like the fact that she even told me about it, but I think that it brought us, I don't want to say closer, but she, out of both of my daughters, she's the one that talks to me more. She opens up about a lot of things because I think that that's helpful to make her, she always needs that reassurance that she's not going crazy, that there was something wrong with her. But I feel bad for other kids that are going through this and they have no idea what it is. They don't even know about it or know to check for it. And maybe they don't have a doctor that's willing to listen or look into different things. There's so much out there now. Everybody's got something, some sort of illness. So I don't know.
My son was also 6 years old and starting first grade when he first got sick, my younger son. So I understand what that's like. I think your question was, what makes it worse?
Yeah, what makes it better? What makes it worse?
Yeah, for ME/CFS, exertion, both physical and mental exertion. Doing too much in any way can make us crash and suddenly get very sick. And particularly if you haven't had any treatments, this sort of crash could last for days or weeks. Or if you really overdo it and you're really severe, it could even last months or be a permanent worsening. So, That's, that's the main thing that makes us worse. Now, there are other things because orthostatic intolerance, like POTS, is a part of this. I've become very heat intolerant. I really don't like summer anymore, because it's just that the heat and the humidity, I just can't tolerate them. They make my OI worse. They make me feel worse. So there are other, environmental things. You mentioned allergies at the beginning, Dana. Because this is an immune disorder, allergies definitely, well, it makes our allergies worse. And then when you get allergy symptoms, that makes everything worse. So, dealing with that right now with spring, everything's in bloom here. But mostly it's physical or mental exertion.
I always feel like when you have something that they can't explain, they just lump it into autoimmune. It's an autoimmune disorder. It's an autoimmune disorder. Like, I don't know. It's crazy.
Well, ME/CFS is not strictly autoimmune because parts of our immune system are overactive, but other parts are underactive. Like we under respond to bacterial infections, so we're very prone to those. So it makes it more difficult to treat because there are treatments for autoimmune conditions. There are treatments for immune deficiency conditions like AIDS. But either of those would make us worse because we're a mixed bag. So the immune disorder is at the heart of this disease, but there aren't a lot of treatments for that.
Do you take something for your condition?
Found with the help of an expert doctor, we found several immune modulators that don't boost the immune system or suppress it, but help to normalize it. And those have helped considerably.
That's good.
That ties into our next question, which is what treatments you tried and what worked and what hasn't worked, which I know, you kind of explained the treatment.
Yeah, we only had one and that was it. Oh, we did see a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever, just to talk those feelings through with her a few times. And I think, that helped as well. But that's it.
So, like I said, there are no FDA approved treatments for ME/CFS. So it's very much, and most doctors will say there are no treatments. When my new primary care physician said, let's try some treatments, she said the first thing to do is to correct your sleep dysfunction because that affects everything. And she said, if we can fix your sleep, it'll help everything. And she was absolutely right about that. So that is another of the characteristics of ME/CFS. We don't get the deep stages of sleep. So you can be in bed for 11 hours and feel like you were half awake all the time. That's why you wake up, still feeling exhausted because you didn't get the stage 3 and stage 4 sleep that are what help your body to recuperate. So we treated that and helped to normalize sleep, not with sedatives, but with medications that help to kind of mimic what a healthy body does at night. In our case, increasing serotonin. And my son and I both take melatonin as well. Other treatments have been some immune modulators, although there aren't an awful lot of those. Low dose naltrexone is one, helps to normalize the immune system. Something called inosine, which here in the US is sold as a supplement. That's interesting because for years it helped us. I recently had to stop taking it because it was actually making me worse. So you have to constantly monitor your condition and decide, try to figure out what's helping and what's not helping. I suspect I'll go back on it at some point, but for now, my immune system's doing better without it. Glutathione is another thing that has helped us. It is a naturally occurring molecule in the body, part of the immune system, deals with energy, detox, and people with ME/CFS don't make enough of it. So supplementing with that has helped as well. Treating orthostatic intolerance has been a huge part of what has helped us improve and why my son's able to work now. We both take low dose beta blockers, which help to bring our heart rates down to closer to normal, not exactly normal, but a little better, so that we can tolerate a little bit of exertion. He also takes something called Florinef, because one of the underlying causes of OI for us is that our bodies can't hold on to fluids. That's why I am constantly drinking water.
Same here.
Yeah. And my son is constantly drinking electrolyte mix, and that helps tremendously. But for him, the Florinef helps his body hold on to more salts and hold on to more fluids when combined with lots of fluids and lots of salts. So we also both have a high salt diet. You know, something your whole life you've been told is wrong, but that's what
Okay,
helps.
okay with that.
Yeah.
Um,
So those are the main things that have helped us. There are some other little things like B12 shots, but you know, those are the main things that have given us the most improvement.
Nice. I'm glad you guys were able to achieve that. Stuff. So what in general for both of you, like what have the conditions changed for you? Whether that be like your daily life back when this was an issue like for your daughter Dina, or now for you Sue, like what has changed from you not having the condition to experiencing it?
I guess it changed in a way that I'm more aware of things now when when she says them to me. You know, I don't just dismiss it, especially with her other condition. It just, as a parent, it was an eye opener, and it just made me more aware of not dismissing, oh, you just have a sore throat. Like, it's not that I'm, you know, an alarmist either, but it just opened my eyes to how crazy the human body can be. Because this kid she's got food allergies. It's a mess. But, you know, she keeps moving on every day and just wonders why her, but it is her. I said it makes you who you are. It made you a stronger person. So,
For sure.
yeah.
How about you, Sue?
It changed everything. It completely changed my life. March 2nd, 2002 marks the division between before and after for me. You know, before I was an active, fully functioning person, very active. You know, I lived an active life. Ironically, I had actually taken a break from my kind of high-powered job 2 years earlier, just because my kids were both young at the time. They were 4 and 8, and I was traveling a lot, and I just thought, my husband was traveling as well, so we were like passing in airports sometimes. And just decided to kind of slow life down. So at the time that I got sick, I was actually living a very chill life. You know, I get really frustrated when people try to blame this disease on, you know, type A personality or stress, or because, you know, it's a disease. It's very often triggered by an infection. And, you know, I had left my job. I was living a very relaxed life at the time, and I was never able to go back to working. My plan was 2 years off and then, you know, resume. I was doing consulting and training. I thought I might do it at a lower level, maybe not quite so much travel, but I was never able to go back to full time. I need a nap every day. You know, even with the treatments for sleep dysfunction, by 1 or 2 in the afternoon, I'm out of energy and I need to sleep again and recharge in order to get through the rest of the day. Typically by 7 in the evening, I am lying down, um, and I turn the light out and go to sleep at 10:30 every night. So I have to live a very routine driven, structured, limited life. Um, in terms of exercise, both the immune treatments and the treatments for OI have helped me to tolerate a little bit of exercise, but I have to wear a heart rate monitor. I have to stay below a certain level, my heart rate below a certain level. The last couple of years, I went through some really, really bad relapses. One after the COVID vaccines, which triggered my immune system. Another one after getting COVID. Each of those lasted about 6 months. Another one last year. So I've had some really bad relapses in recent years, even after discovering all these treatments. So it is something, that just rules my life and limits what I can do.
For
Stephanie and me relating to all the things that you're saying.
yeah. I love dysautonomia. What advice would you guys give to someone who's newly diagnosed with your condition or just suspect of having a condition?
Was that question number 7?
Yes.
Okay, because she wrote, don't dismiss the thoughts and feelings you are feeling. Tell someone and don't be scared.
That's great
That's
advice. Well, first of all, in terms of, the hardest part with ME/CFS is often getting a diagnosis. And the key there is recognizing whether you have that exertion intolerance. So you can kind of test yourself. If you think you might have ME/CFS, then on a day when you're feeling relatively good for you, try taking a walk or going shopping or even cooking and being on your feet for a while and see if you have that characteristic crash, anywhere from an hour to 24 hours later. If you suddenly get much worse, and particularly if it feels like you have the flu, the sore throat's not always there, but some kind of immune symptoms that make you feel like you've caught something, even when you haven't, then those are signs of ME/CFS. In terms of finding treatments, just to be aware that there are treatments, even though so many doctors will say there aren't. And so you have to learn as much as you can. That's what my blog is all about. Over the years, I've written about the treatments that have helped us. I've got a YouTube channel too now to try to spread the word so that there are so many patients who've had this for 10 or 20 years and have never been offered a single treatment. And so you have to be your own advocate and stand up for yourself. And if you don't have the energy to do that, then you need someone in your corner, a parent, a spouse, a friend, someone who can speak up for you and advocate for you.
Definitely.
And I'll combine the last 2 questions kind of together. If the public were to know one thing about the condition you deal with, what would you want it to be? And if doctors were to know one thing about the condition, what would you want it to be?
Good, so you can go.
Patients that exertion intolerance, because so many people are caught in this horrible place of not knowing they're very sick, but not knowing what's wrong with them. So if patients are aware of this exertion intolerance, then they can even kind of test themselves and look for it. In terms of doctors, that there are treatments available, and even if your doctor's not aware of treatments, you need to find a doctor who is at least willing to listen to you and to learn alongside you. So that, and I was very lucky that my doctor was like that. I read all the research I could find, and particularly once my kids got sick. As Dina knows, there is nothing worse than seeing your kids suffer and feeling helpless. So I would bring research into my doctor, and she'd take a look at it. She might say, "Ooh, I don't feel comfortable with this." And eventually we found a specialist who could do those things that she didn't feel comfortable with. But very often, she'd read the research I brought her and say, "Okay, we can give this a try." So you don't need an expert, but you at least need a doctor who's open-minded, who's not afraid to say, "I don't know, but I'm willing to learn."
That.
That can be hard to find, but it's really, really important.
100%.
And to add on to that, I know of some people who have ME/CFS, and well, for the longest time, it was thought that exercise was a viable treatment for ME/CFS. And I know of some people who their doctors insisted on it, but it just made them worse.
Yeah, that is a horrible, horrible era in our history that we are hoping to put behind us. That theory that exercise is a treatment for ME/CFS has been debunked, but a lot of doctors have been slow to catch on to that. And yet there are still doctors all over the world who, tell you to push yourself to exercise or prescribe physical therapy without limits. And, doing that is going to make you worse. And, finally, the medical establishment has listened and acknowledged that there is evidence that exercise makes us worse. There have been enough studies to prove that. And you can find those studies online if you've got a doctor who's trying to push you, to exercise as a treatment. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out because it's a huge problem still.
So I too, my phone is almost dead. So if I go somewhere, that's why. But I too recently found a doctor who, when I did, one of her statements to me was, "My job is to help you live your best life. I'm here to help you do anything to help you live like day to day your best life." And I thought, wow, like, where have you been all my life? Because I've never had that experience. So in closing, I would just say, don't let someone dismiss your feelings because you know your body the best. And you also, well, when your kids are little, you kind of know them. And as they get older, you know this, it's a little harder to know them as well. They don't talk to you as much and tell you things, but just don't dismiss those little voices in your head that are saying something's not right. I know this isn't normal and I want answers. And you just got to go search until you find them and hope that you get somebody that's going to listen. So.
I had a question just come in on time when I was watching it. Because I last asked it at the last guest speaker meeting, and it's similar to your last question, but do you have any stories about healthcare workers or friends or family who did something that made you feel supported throughout your journey with your conditions?
My family was just dumbfounded, like we were, like, what do you mean, what? Like, what's happening? But always supportive. I didn't have anyone that made me feel stupid or, like it wasn't warranted what I was seeking help for. But again, we were just lucky because I'm sure other people don't find doctors who listen to them like that.
Unfortunately, after 21 years, we still have close family members who think that we're exaggerating, who think it's not a big deal. There's a lot of denial. And I don't know if it, I've tried to come to terms with that over the last 21 years, telling myself it's, they do care about me. They just don't want to believe that I could be seriously ill. Luckily, on the other side of that, I have some amazing friends who have stuck with me through all of this. When I first got sick, I did lose 2 friends, which was devastating. 2 people just disappeared from my life. One got mad because I canceled out of something I was supposed to go to with her. And it was like one of those parties where people sell you things. And I was so sick and couldn't get up off the couch, let alone go out. And I just never heard from her again. But as I said, on the other side, I am blessed to have some friends that I've had for over 30 years, who they've never, my psychologist used to talk about something called empathy fatigue, that over time, people around you, at the beginning, you get a lot of support, and then over time, people kind of get sick of it. My friends have not been like that, these ones that have stuck by me. And, I've got friends who, when I got worse last year, they just text and say, hey, we're bringing dinner over. Or another set of friends who we've now been to their house for dinner like 10 times in a row. And they are always so kind and so welcoming and never expect me to reciprocate because they knew I was going through a rough time. So we're blessed with some wonderful friends.
That's great. I'm very happy for you guys for that. Sarah, could you share our slideshow again? Awesome, you're already on top of it. Thank you. So, thank you so much to Dina and Sue for sharing all that you have shared tonight. I know it's been helpful for at least a couple people in the chat, and we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. So for any of you who want to see more, you can follow us on our Instagram, Invisible Illness Loyola, or scan the QR code for our link tree. We have all of our past presentations that we've created on it. And you can also sign up for our email list and see our YouTube channel. This recording will be there shortly. And yeah, that's kind of it. Also, as a reminder for people, we do have next week, Tuesday, April 18th at 7:30 in LSB 312. So one room above the room we're currently in. Now we have our last meeting of the year, well, the school year at least, and we're having trivia night. So all things invisible illness and disability related. We're going to have a bunch of trivia questions and prizes and some candy bars. So be sure to come to that. We will also have our button makers. So you can make awareness ribbon buttons if you'd like to. And just a general announcement, if you know any college friends or people who are interested in starting a similar organization like what we have now, yes, the limit is next Tuesday. So a week from today, if you have any college friends at other colleges or universities who are interested in starting an organization like ours, please contact us and let us know, because we would be happy to help them. We have our whole program kind of implemented and can, assist with that, and good leadership experience, and just another way to spread awareness at other schools. So thank you again to Sue and Dina for taking the time out.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you so much. And I hope everything keeps going as smoothly as smooth as it can be.
Thank you. Glad I could help.
Thank you.
Bye, Sue.
Hi, Gina. Nice to meet you.
You too.